Engagement at iCivics, and we're going to now start recording, but I'm the Director of Educator Engagement at iCivics, and so excited to be able to collaborate with some amazing organizations and amazing colleagues as we present these sessions. So today's session, Michael, my colleague from iCivics, will be dropping into the chat our landing page for today. Those of you who are new to us, we love having that landing page as a space to have everyone share thoughts and ideas and just be able to process a little bit more. So that way, it's not just, we're just not going to talk at you for an hour and a half. We are going to be engaging, having conversations, doing some deep thinking through all of that. So we're so excited, and we have lots of people popping to the chat while we are popping into the site. While we are giving everyone a moment to jump on, I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share, show you the site, show you what you're going to see on the site, and jump right into our conversation today. And I always give the disclaimer, former elementary classroom teacher, so when I ask for thumbs up, it's not an insult, it's just because I can't help it. All those years of training. And Kimberly, are you having trouble getting access to the site or the slide deck? Maybe that could be it. We can make sure. Slides, awesome. We can easily fix that. This is definitely the joy of Google and the fact that we're all educators, right? This happens all the time, and we're so excited. So if you keep scrolling down on your page while we fix that Google Slides issue for you, we'll give you access to that in just a moment. What I would love for you to do is go ahead and add yourself to our map. As you can see, these are all of these points on the map represent individuals who have been participating in these sessions throughout the year. So as you can see, we have been having a wonderful community develop here. And to add yourself onto our Padlet, and this is going to be for all of your Padlets today, what you're going to do is you're actually going to click on the plus sign and add your location in, and that will show you, that'll add you to our map, which is just fabulous. It's just wonderful to see it grow and see just the community thinking about EAD come together. And after that, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, where you're coming from, and how do you teach moments of change in your classroom now? So we'll give you a moment to do that. And we will, while you're doing that, we'll update our slides access. Yes, the landing site link is going to constantly be dropped in today. Thank you, Michael. There's our landing site for today. And on our landing site, introduce yourself. This is the great thing about Padlet. It gives you the space to take your time, share your thoughts and ideas. Sometimes we know that chat can be a sprint, and you need an extra minute sometimes. So on that Padlet, one of the other wonderful benefits of using this format for our session today is that as we continue, you still have that space there to go back, add your thoughts and your ideas. Okay, so we'll give everyone a moment to do that while we go over some of the technical pieces for today, making sure that we have everything all set and everyone's ready to jump in. So obviously, if you're here with us today, you're here to join the conversation about exploring moments of change. You are in the right place. Think of it like showing up to your college classroom. You're like, I don't know if I'm the right one, but you're here, you're meant to be with us. And as you're going in to today's conversation, a couple of reminders. Our Google site, we just went over that, and that please make sure that you kind of keep that up. And if you ever need it, just request it in the chat. Michael's there dropping it in constantly. Those of you who are wants just a letter of documentation saying that you participated in today's webinar, just make sure that you're completing the Padlets throughout the session today and complete the exit ticket at the end of the session. That's what gives us our information to reach out to you. And I would actually encourage everyone to complete the exit ticket at the end. We love the feedback. We keep improving. We keep trying to make sure that we're designing so that you're having the best experience. If you are a social media person, please go ahead and follow us at EAD Roadmap and use the hashtag EAD Roadmap to share anything that you find insightful, anything that you're having just a great time learning about. So feel free to use that as well. And we're going to hop back over to our session so we can see our introductions. Great, you can add gifts, you can add anything you'd like to introduce yourself. So we're so excited to see all of you here. We have some first timers, which is wonderful. We have some middle school teachers, high school teachers. Great, I saw an elementary school teacher. As a former elementary person, I am always excited when we have some of those educators with our youngest learners in here. So that's wonderful today. Amazing. And Chris, to add your thoughts, all you're going to do is press on the plus sign wherever you find it on the Padlet. And those of you who are back again, tell us, what have you been doing with EAD? How have you been incorporating it into your work and into your thinking, even if it's planning to next year? As Tina and I were just mentioning it, I mean, thank you for being here. It's May. You guys have a lot on your plate, and we are so grateful that you're taking time out of your evening to be with us today. I'm going to go back to our slides and dive right in. So those of you who are new to us, I'm going to do a quick overview of just EAD Roadmap and the different elements. We do have longer sessions from earlier in the series that I'm happy to chat you the link and just send it over. If you haven't seen them yet, that's a great way to just get the foundation of EAD in a little more depth compared to our kind of fly through right now. And those of you who are returning, thank you so much for your patience. We know it's always like Natasha's sprint through EAD 101. So as a reminder, EAD was funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities and the Department of Education, and it was led by an amazing collaboration from our primary investigators, Circle, civics, the Edmund J. Safra Center for Ethics, the School of Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership at Arizona State University, and the Jonathan Tisch College of Civic Life at Tufts University. And the power behind all of this work is really the collaboration that was happening, the collaboration between historians, political scientists, and educators, over 300 individuals coming together to work on this project. So super excited to see that. And as we think about the roadmap is an inquiry-based framework that provides guidance for excellence in civics and history for all learners. And just remembering that the roadmap is a framework. It's not a curriculum, not a mandate. It just provides states and districts the flexibility to use the roadmap to deliver that excellent history and civic learning, and really leans into those essential discussions around topics like reflective patriotism, that kind of understanding we'll actually dive into today. And it also encourages our telling of America's plural yet shared story through a more complete and honest accounting of the past, both the good and the bad. As we think about the core documents that we have connected with EAD, we always reference EAD, Educating for American Democracy. We have our EAD report, which contains the theory, rationale, and approach to the roadmap. We have our EAD roadmap itself, which contains 7 themes across 4 grade levels. And we also have our pedagogy companion, which describes the 6 pedagogical core principles. As we dive into today's theme, today we're exploring theme 5, institutional and social transformations, a series of refoundings. And as we dive into this, just refreshing us in terms of the structure of the EAD roadmap. When we think about the EAD roadmap, it is a complex document with lots of layers, really sparking that inquiry. And as we see there, we really start with those design challenges where it's really getting us to lean into those points of tension. Then we get into those content themes, those driving questions, and those driving questions are really used for a more long-term planning. And finally, down to those sample guiding questions, which really frames our history and civic concepts for much shorter inquiries. So as we see this gradually getting more focused as we get more in depth into these different resources. Now, as we think about our 5 design challenges, these are really what encourage educators to lean into the tensions that arise in history and civics instruction, rather than shying away from those concepts. Today, we are diving in to our design challenge number 4, civic honesty and reflective patriotism. And those of you who are wanting to explore some of those earlier design challenges aligned to some of our other themes, we will be adding that in. And see some of us having a little difficulty with audio. Is everyone else able to hear okay? Yes? Okay, wonderful. I always like to check. And as we think about our design challenge number 4 today, this is a design challenge. We all always have our favorite design challenges. I always toggle between design challenge number 2 and design challenge number 4. And design challenge number 4, really getting us to lean into that concept of reflective patriotism. And as we think about this design challenge, really, for many of, and this is something we talk about amongst our colleagues, but many of our colleagues feel like this design challenge and that concept of reflective patriotism finally provided us with some language to discuss those complicated points of tensions that arise as we engage with historical concepts, really allowing us to be honest about the past and yet appreciative of the founding of the United States. And throughout these moments, throughout history, thinking about where those moments of transformation have been happening as we work towards strengthening our constitutional democracy. And for those of you who are saying reflective patriotism, what do we mean by this? This concept of reflective patriotism, when we look at the EAD report, the opening paragraph, and this, I don't always just read straight, but I'm just going to read it. The United States stands at a crossroads of peril and possibility. A healthy constitutional democracy always demands reflective patriotism. In times of crisis, it is especially important that we, the people, unite love of country with clear-eyed wisdom about our successes and failures in order to chart our forward path. So as we talk about this concept, as we keep this concept and we talk about these tensions, thinking about what does this concept of reflective patriotism really mean as we think about these different moments of transformation throughout our history. And it's always wonderful to bring back our youth and our students to the center and keep them at the center of our thoughts. Now, this artwork was actually created by a 10th grader in Maryland for our design challenge competition. And what I would love for you to do, just do a little bit of thinking, share on the first Padlet you see there. How does this artwork represent the concept of reflective patriotism? And as I'm going to toggle over to the Padlet just so that you can see where you are. And you can see part of the image there set as the background, but I'll toggle over so that you can see the full image. But go ahead and take a moment. And I just want you thinking about how does this image, how did this student really try to capture this concept of reflective patriotism? This is the joy of giving people time to stop, think. This is the joy of having 90 minutes. We have plenty of time to do that. We don't always have to rush. We can slow down, do some thinking, do some processing. So by the time you leave us, you didn't just get talked at. You had a time to stop, think, reflect. As you're thinking about that concept of reflective patriotism, thinking about how it's captured. Okay, I see, let me go back to our comments now. Our America is on our hands, the colors, the diversity, we the people, okay, reflected in the background and its experiences. The drips of ink represent the mistakes or smudges in history. Wonderful. Individual ideas are accepted, and yet all coming together to make this work. Amazing. And so please continue to record your thoughts and ideas there, and we are going to keep moving along. And also, this is also just a great, just something to share too, as you start incorporating the EAD roadmap and the design challenges into your work. We actually have a whole collection of student artwork that was submitted for an art competition. This one first place for this design challenge, but it's just another way to spark that conversation, spark that creativity. Now, as we think about those 7 themes, diving in, we've already kind of progressed through many of them. And for those of you that want to dive deeper into some of the themes, please go ahead and go to the link that Michael is going to throw into the chat. Goes over the overview of all of the 7 themes. Today, we are specifically diving into theme number 5, institutional and social transformation. And as we think about this theme, really thinking about how we're exploring this concept in terms of social arrangements, conflicts, and how they've combined with political institutions to help shape our constitutional democracy. Now, with this, one of the elements that you'll see within the roadmap for every theme are both these history thematic questions, sorry, tongue-tied there, and our civics thematic questions. So both of these pieces really having us continue the conversation with our highest level of questioning. And then we get into these key concepts that we can see start in K5 and progress to 612. One of my favorite elements of this roadmap is that vertical alignment and the spiraling we see, where we see in K5, our youngest learners are thinking about their community specifically and thinking about how they're analyzing conflict and change and consequences of that, and thinking about how that then transitions into 612 as they think about some of our founding documents and where we see those changes there. That gradual progression, understanding how we set up this thinking in K5, set it up for our 612 situation, our 612 grade levels. So that way we're not waiting to engage with these rigorous topics when they get into high school, but we're actually starting with them when they're very young. And as we look across these driving questions, just a note, these driving questions do not include all the driving questions. I was trying to make the font big enough so you could read them. Some of them get a little heavy. So on the website, you'll definitely see all of the driving questions listed there. But here you'll see in K5 where they're starting to look at local change at the community level, beginning to understand the need for change. Then we see that progression into 3.5 and beyond, but 3.5 beginning to look at the concepts of rights and citizenship and analyzing how that has changed over time. Then in 6.8, taking a look at the rights from a political, economic, and civil rights lens and seeing the changes there. And then finally in 9.12, really dive into this concept of refounding and discussing how amendments to the Constitution created or did not create refoundings. So really getting into those complicated concepts. And we can see how by starting in K2 with our community, we can see how we're setting our students up for success as we work towards that analysis in 9.12. And now what I would like you to do is actually take a moment, and I want you to stop, think, how can the EAD roadmap deepen student learning to be appreciative of the founding of the United States, yet honest of the wrongs of the past? Now, as you think of this, think about that design challenge number 4, think about theme 5. I'll go back to those driving questions and just think about what is this starting to spark in your thinking. Okay, Nani, we're just starting to scratch the surface. My amazing colleagues, from our partner organization, Democratic Knowledge Project, are going to dive in just a moment. So take a minute, and I'd like you to go back to our site and just do a little bit of thinking. Okay, as you have your landing site open, I'm going to go back to those questions. You can also access them right above here. This will bring you to the to the EAD website if you want to look at that, but I'll also go back a tab. We always know it's nice to have the questions right there as we're thinking about how we see this engagement within our classroom and within the work that we're starting to do. So take a couple of moments. This is just an initial thought. Where can you start to see those connections? You could be thinking about what you're doing in the classroom currently. You can be thinking about how you could bring this into your instruction. Okay, seeing some specific examples, wonderful. Strategies using Socratic circles or seminars. Thinking about those key concepts in K-5. Thinking about how actions over the course of time have resulted in what we have now as our America, as our United States. Thinking about how we learn from those mistakes and showing the importance of that. I love that. I love that thought right there. Wonderful. Take another moment. Feel free to continue adding in any thoughts or ideas. While you do that, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to welcome our amazing friends over at the Democratic Knowledge Project, Tina Blythe, and we have Katie Giles as well. They're going to give a more formal introduction. I always love when I can hand it off, but I'm so excited that they took the time to engage us in just some deeper thinking around this theme today, and it's going to be great. So I'm going to turn it over to them. And if you have any questions, anything you're wondering, feel free to keep it in the chat. We're still here. We're still covering that for you there. So Tina, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Natasha. Thanks for having us. My name is Tina Blythe. I am the Director of Professional Learning for the Democratic Knowledge Project and also the Director of Learning and Outreach for a research group called Project Zero, based at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Katie will say a little bit more about the Democratic Knowledge Project when she introduces herself. I just want to note that I am while I've been a researcher and lead on professional development for many years, I'm a former middle and high school teacher, and I continue to teach at the Ed School at Harvard, working with master's students here. So Katie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Tina. Hi, everyone. It's great to see so many folks from all over the country tonight. I'm Katie Giles. I'm the project officer for the Democratic Knowledge Project. We're based at Harvard University at the Edmund J. Safra Center for Ethics, which is a mouthful, alongside our colleagues at the Graduate School of Education at Harvard. We're so glad to be joining you. Our team has been involved with EAD from the beginning. Danielle Allen is our faculty director, and she is one of the leaders that Natasha showed on the earlier slide before. So we have a lot in common with EAD and with our colleagues from the different organizations and perspectives that started it. We're a civic education initiative. We are curriculum developers or co-developers with educators. We're researchers, we're assessment developers, and we also provide professional development. So we're excited to be here today and share some of our approaches to civic education.
Thank you so much, Katie. And I completely forgot that I was the one who was supposed to be screen sharing during that. I apologize. We'll look at the screens now. I want to echo Katie's appreciation for everyone. We know how incredibly busy your lives are, and it's amazing that you are in a place of taking your own learning seriously and making the time for it. And we're grateful to have this time with you. I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to do a little overview of what we are about here today. Got this set and screen share. Boom. We will make these slides available to you as soon as the session is over. I will send a link to Natasha. Natasha will put it up on the website that's there. So don't feel like you need to capture everything that we're about to see. So I just want to note that we also have the name of our colleague Adrienne Bach, who is the director of curriculum. She helped develop this session, and so we wanted to name her and recognize her as well. We will put links to everything that we're talking about in the chat as well as we go, so you can easily connect and resource. So what are we thinking about today? Well, you know, in order to help students develop this sense of both honoring our roots as a country, while at the same time recognizing the challenges that we face and the ways in which we fall short of the ideals, we need somehow to support students in thinking more complexly about the topics and issues with which we engage them in civics. And so what we're going to be sharing with you tonight is a piece or an approach to supporting student thinking that makes complexity more accessible and that engages students in thinking beyond a surface of the information that they're giving to uncover more depth. I want to say one thing about the spirit in which I think we are gathered here today, which is that Kitty and I are not here to sell you anything. Neither is Natasha. We're really here in the spirit of sharing resources. And so, and sharing ideas, knowing full well that everything, there's, the framework, the pedagogical approach, whatever it is, has not been invented that can simply be dropped into place in every possible context and have it work beautifully, right? Everything needs to be adapted. So we're sharing this with you here in the spirit of inviting you to consider and think about what's relevant, what you think is supportive, what you think is going to be helpful, and you'll take those pieces with you. And the other things that feel less so, you're just going to leave them here. It's totally fine. So let me keep going. And Natasha, it's a little bit hard for me to track chat while I'm also screen sharing. So if something comes up in the chat that you think I need to know, I invite you to just holler right out and let me know about it. Is that all right?
Sounds great, Tina. We'll be sure to do that.
Awesome, thank you. Okay. So we're just doing in our introduction and overview right now, sharing with you a little bit about our work at the Democratic Knowledge Project. And we want to dig a little more deeply into this idea of civic dispositions and how to support them. We're going to share a tool that's used throughout the Democratic Knowledge Project's 8th grade curriculum called a thinking routine, which some of you may be familiar with. And the main thing we're going to do is actually practice a thinking routine ourselves. We're going to try it out and see how it goes. We'll share a few tips and we'll have some closing thoughts along with some resources for you to share. So I want to start off by just inviting us into these 3 big things that we're after when we think about deeper civic learning in the context of the Democratic Knowledge Project. We're hoping that we can support students to cultivate these 3 core dispositions, which we name as efficacy or civic self-confidence. That is, we want students to have the knowledge, the understanding, and the confidence to be able to act as civic participants effectively in the world. It's important to couple that with civic self-care, or what we call self-protection. That is, if you're going to be out there in the world, you need to know how to analyze the risks that you're taking and how to engage those risks thoughtfully. You need to figure out what resources are trustworthy that I'm going to listen to, and which ones do I need to actually steer away from because I intuit that they are actually not going to be helpful to me, right? And these need to be combined with equitability, or what we think of as civic reciprocity. That is, we hope that students come to see that their good and the good for other people are entwined together. We want citizens who recognize the sacrifices that other citizens make and who themselves are willing to make sacrifices for the common good that we're all working toward. So one tool that we use to support the cultivation of those kinds of dispositions to really engage students in the kind of civic thinking that gets them there is this thing called a thinking routine. Now, I'm just curious, and I'm going to look at my my screen for a second and just give me a thumbs up, either virtually or with your actual thumb, if you have heard of a thinking routine before and have or have tried one out. See 1 thumbs up. Any more? Few thumbs up there as I scroll through. Okay, great. So we have some expertise in the room. Great. And for those of you who are here, that's okay. It's this will be a very light and I hope interesting introduction for you. So a thinking routine is just a simple set of steps that we that outline some thinking that we invite students to engage in. They're usually simple, easy to learn. They transfer easily from topic to topic and often across disciplines, although our focus for today is really on civic thinking and how we support students in thinking civically toward a deeper civic learning. Now, that portability is important because when we talk about a thinking routine, That word routine suggests that they get repeated often. We need that in order to cultivate that particular way of thinking. Right? I want to share with you, and of course, our why thinking routines. Well, we hope all of those thinking dispositions are linked to particular ways of thinking. Students' ability to build on what they already know, for example, students' ability to find examples out in the world of what they've learned in school. The students' capacity to take others' perspectives, to analyze information, right? All of these are routine, are thinking, are kinds of thinking that we support through routines. So I want to invite us into practicing with one of these routines. And I'm going to stop my screen share for just a second and talk to you. And I'm so great. I have to say, I really appreciate folks who have their cameras on. I know that it can be hard to be sitting in front of a screen. I also want to fully recognize that some of you are in situations where it's not possible to put the camera on. Technologically, your bandwidth won't hold it. You've got kids running around, roommates running around, pets running around. I get it. And so if you can, great. And if you can't, I get it. I understand. One thing that is critical in the development of civic capacities is that students be able to take other perspectives, right? That they understand that whatever, I hope, right? When I was teaching 8th grade, my fondest hope was that my students would understand that whatever text or source they encountered, whether it was a textbook or an article in the newspaper or a video they had watched, that they understood that there's never just one story, right? That there are always other stories going on around the edges, that there are, and there are also stories that are not being told. And we hope to cultivate in students the possibility of the potential to look for those stories, right? To be able to engage with those. So actually, I hope one question that my students are always asking is, what's the story here? But not just what the story is, what are the stories here? That they're culling the essence, they're able to articulate that and also able to name what's not there. So we're going to actually engage in a little learning experience together. And I want to invite you all to just be yourselves. You don't need to pretend to be your students in this process. So we're going to watch a video together, and we're going to use a routine called main side hidden. Main side hidden. And I'm going to share that routine with you, and then invite you to use it as a tool for viewing and then discussing a short video about voting rights. Okay. So I'm going to do my screen share one more time. Okay. So thumbs up if you've got my screen back. Yeah, you can see it. Yeah, great, thanks. So remember, not what's the story here, but what are the stories here? We're hoping to engage students in uncovering complexity. So the piece that we're going to look at is, it comes from StoryCorps, which I think a number of you know is a nonprofit in the US that tries to capture the stories of Americans from all walks of life, of all colors and creeds and across the spectrum. And it's often in the form of an interview where two people will go and talk together about a particular episode in the person's life. And the one that I'm going to invite you to listen to is Teresa Burrows talking to her daughter, Tony Love, about her experience trying to register to vote in the 1940s. I want to, and as you listen to the story, I invite you to think about main side hidden. So as you listen, what do you think the main story is here? Well, what's the literal story that's being documented? That's the first step. And also think about what might be some side stories, some stories happening around the edges. So it may not involve the main story directly, but they've got relevance or meaning in some way. We want to be sure to name them and call them out. Finally, what might be some hidden stories here? What stories might be obscured or happening below the surface or not readily apparent on a first listen or watch? Okay. So before we get started, I want to, I'm going to put the steps for main side hidden in the chat so that you'll have access to them as you watch, and you can think about it. If it helps you to do a little diagram for yourself, feel free. Or you can also, let me just get out of here. Or you can also just think about it. You can watch this little video without any note taking at all. So I'm going to put this in here, main side hidden. And then I'm going to share the link to the chat. The link to the video. You've already got the link to the chat. So there's main side hidden. And then I'm going to share the link to the video with you. The video is about 2 minutes and 45 seconds long. And I'm going to give you the link so that everybody can watch it independently so that we're not dependent on this connection working perfectly, which I've learned my lesson not to count on. So watch the video. And then take another 2 or 3 minutes to consider main side hidden. Make some notes to yourself when we come back. We're going to have a little time in small groups so that you can share your thinking and also hear other people's thinking about this particular story. So here is the link to the chat. And we will, I invite you while you're watching to, if you'd like to shut off your screen. And it's 7:38. We're going to come back together at 7. Let's call it 7:45. So take a little time to think and reflect. Take a stretch if you need it, and we'll see you back here at. Oh, sorry, everybody's in different time zones. At 15 minutes before the hour. See you in a few. We'll come back in one more minute. And welcome back, colleagues. Okay. So hopefully you were able to watch the video and had a little time to think about the main, the side, and the hidden stories here. We're going to go into small groups to give you a chance to both capture some of your thinking and share your thinking with others. Let me explain a little bit about how we're going to do that. I'm putting small group directions in the chat. So please begin with the person who teaches the youngest learners, and your first round should be introductions, who you are, where you are, and what you do there. In your second round, please share your main stories, how you named the main story here, and why. In your next round, please share your side stories and why you thought they were side stories and side stories worth noting. And finally, the last round, what hidden stories do you think might be present here under the surface, somewhat obscured or not fully represented? And why do you say that? What makes you say that? Please lean on that why. And if you would like to, if you have colleagues who give short answers, all you need to do is say, what makes you say that, to get a little more thinking out. It's an important move in this. I want to just say, if you finish those and you have time, we're going to be in these small groups for about 12 minutes or so, maybe 13. If you have a little extra time after you've shared, also had a chance to share your thinking, please talk about the structure itself. What was it like to use this to guide your thinking about this video and to guide your conversation about it? One last caveat. You may discover when you get in there that what one or more of you called a main story, somebody else called a side story, and vice versa. And if that happens, do a little investigating. How are you thinking about what the main story is and why that's main, or what the side story is and why that is? This is one of the things we really want our students to understand, right? How to tell what's at the heart here and what's not being represented. And it's not always clear what's what. So this is part of the thinking that we do with this routine. All right. Great. Chris, thanks for letting us know. I see that in the chat there. Let me also give you one last link, which is a link to a set of Google Slides that will have a slide for each breakout group in which you can capture your thinking. So if someone from the group, everybody in the group can write on these, but if somebody from the group would pay attention to capturing your thinking on this slide deck as you go, that would be great. Look for your group number and click on your group number and then go. And of course, in Zoom rooms, your group number is usually at the top of your screen if you're on a, so if you're not sure, just glance up there and it'll tell you what room you're in. Okay, we should mostly be in groups of 4. And that means that you'll have to be mindful of time in order to make sure everyone has a chance to speak. Here we go. We will be coming back together at the top of the hour. I'm opening up the breakout rooms now, and you should all get invited. Okay, here comes Chris. Got him? Chris is connecting to audio. I'm going to assign Chris to room 7. Oh, I think everybody got sorted, including your colleagues. Oh, I'm sorry. They'll come back.
They're fine. They'll be happy to
Okay.
have a conversation with some educators.
Okay.
I'm going to pause the recording.
Feel free to go back and thanks, Natasha. Everybody, I encourage you to go back and look at what other folks have read. I know not everybody had time to capture some thoughts. That's totally fine, but there's some very intriguing noticings and thinking going on here, especially in the hidden stories. So one story that may not be told here is the story of what counts as history. And this is really a kind of micro, very personal form of history. And how does that stack up with or compare with the bigger forms of history that we read about in books, textbooks often. So it's really intriguing. And another interesting potential hidden story about the role of community leaders, such as the minister from a church, and what role they might be playing right now in contemporary society. Interesting, great questions to be pursuing. So let me just invite you for a minute to share a reflection in the chat about the main side hidden itself. What was it like to use it, and what questions might you have about it? Todd, I see your note. I like the different perspectives, especially different takes on the hidden. Yeah, and it's often. I love the group shout outs too. Yeah. Joseph, thank you for that. It definitely was an exercise that broke down thinking and allows for further discussion. Great, but I'm wondering if students would feel stumped the first time. I felt stumped. Yeah, it can be a little challenging to do this kind of thing for sure. Definitely makes you think about what you heard. Great exercise encourages deep thinking. We felt the main story was full of specific facts, and the side ideas left us with questions and more questions. And how great is that? You know, a lot of times thinking routines do end up generating questions, and they don't all have to be answered. Sometimes the most powerful driver of learning is an unanswered question, and just allowing us to sit with it and document it can be super useful. I also want to note, I think it was it Kobe's comment from earlier that you worry about your middle school students and their capacity to engage in critical thinking. Yeah, and that's a lot of why we develop thinking routines and use them in the context of the DKP curriculum where we are supporting civic thinking. Those dispositions, equitability, self-care, efficacy, the capacity to hold in your mind both the idea that the United States is a country founded on powerful and noteworthy ideals, and that we fall short of them often, right? That is a hard thing for young people to be able to hold in their heads. It's a hard thing for us to hold in our heads sometimes, right? And so having these tools to support this complex thinking, this ability to go beyond the surface become really important as we support students. I'm just going to do a quick skim. Any other questions? See, Stephanie's got questions, but I'm not finding them. Yeah, how to scaffold for students not used to doing any thinking outside the box. You know, sometimes what people do here is they'll start off with just one step of a thinking routine, and we'll practice that one for a little bit, then add the second, then add the third. So you can choose to kind of stage it for your students if you like. I'm going to share my screen one more time and just take us through a few closing thoughts here after I get over here and get it called up. I want to share with you a couple of other thinking routines as we use them in the DKP curriculum. And sorry, friends. I was so interested in reading your thinking that I lost my window here. So other routines that we draw on, see, wonder, connect. We often can do this with that image that Natasha shared with you at the beginning, and the question Natasha asked, how is this an effective representation of this particular theme? We could have done see, wonder, connect with that. What do you see here? What does it make you wonder about, and what connections do you make to the theme? If we repeated that a number of times with students, they would eventually cultivate that capacity to observe, to think and wonder, and then to start to make connections to their own learning. claim support question is another really important one in both history and civics. So what claim do you want to make here? How are you going to support it? And then what's a question someone could ask about your claim, right? Take the role of the other person. There's a whole toolbox full of thinking routines on the Project Zero website. We're going to share that link with you now. We invite you to explore. And we're also going to invite you to explore the DKP curriculum. There's some pieces of it that are publicly available. I'm going to skip over my tips for using thinking routines, except to say that maybe the most important thing is you have to repeat them and use them regularly. It's just like going to the gym and working out. You have to use that. You can't just do the bicep curl once and expect to have a muscle. You have to do it over and over again. Same thing here. And the real question is not what thinking routine should I use, but what kind of civic thinking do I want my students doing routinely? And then you choose the routine based on that. Okay, I'm going to close by sharing in the chat some resources for you. Let me just go grab those, stop the share, and put them in. We want to give you both the link to the DKP website, to the Project Zero website, where you can find more thinking routines. And if you are interested in learning more about the DKP curriculum, which is still being piloted, we invite you to contact Katie, who you met earlier. So let me just make sure that's there. And thank you all. I really appreciate the attention that you brought and the thinking that you did with each other and the ideas that you shared. I know it's late in the evening for some of you and the end of a long, hard school day for most of you. And it's I just am so grateful for your willingness to invest some energy. Thanks, Natasha. I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Tina. One of the fabulous reasons that I had invited Tina to join us this evening, just think about how deep your thinking was for a video that was 2 minutes, 45 seconds, short to the point, but understanding how the depth of questioning, the depth of wondering that can happen around something so brief. So excited that you were able to present with us to us today, Tina. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And as we continue in our conversation today, one of the pieces that I want to make sure, and I'm going to refresh my screen because of course the one I want to share is not showing, because that's what always happens. Stop sharing. Let's try this again. One of the pieces that I want to make sure to point out for those of you who are new to us today is part of EAD. We talked about those design challenges. We talked about those themes. Tina led us through a great experience of doing some deep thinking with some of that content. And what I want us to think about as well are those core pedagogical principles. So within EAD, we have these 6 core pedagogical principles that really start to distinguish what should the learning environment look like and what do we need to establish as the learning environment and the dispositions within our school building, within our classrooms, in order to get to that rigorous inquiry. Now, as we think about these core pedagogical principles, I really want to highlight principle number 3, when we think about building an EAD ready classroom and school. So when we think about some of the content that we might see associated with theme number 5 and understanding those points of tension that goes back and forth with some of this rich content, that you have to make sure that you're taking the time to establish the learning environment in order to have those rigorous conversations. And that's one of the aspects that I really appreciate about the Pedagogic Companion. As it dives into those different pieces, it really gives us some ideas around some teacher moves, some school and district leader moves, and even some student moves in terms of what can everyone be doing to make sure that we're establishing this environment in order to create the space for those rich and rigorous conversations around some of these really complex topics. So just wanted to bring that to the surface. Those of you who haven't had an opportunity to dive into that Pedagogic Companion, definitely recommend it. Might be one of my favorite parts. We know I'm a little biased. It's okay. And those of you who want more in depth, I see Christine in there. These videos are all available on YouTube. We'll send a follow-up email. Usually takes us about a day and a half to get it up onto YouTube. So with that in mind, you'll have the videos there. You can go back and review. And we even have the links to previous sessions too, because in session number 1, we really go deep into some of the different pieces. So if you want some more foundational elements, that will be available for you too. And on that note, I do want us to think about EAD Roadmap in the classroom. I have 2 of our amazing colleagues from iCivics, former classroom teachers who are going to dive in. They're going to show you a couple of examples from the EAD website. If you haven't checked it out yet, go to the educatingforamericandemocracy.org. It's long, but it's all one word. It's easy. Go right there. You can download the roadmap and the report and the pedagogy companion. You can find that there. You can find our interactive roadmap. We know sometimes the PDF can be a little overwhelming. With the interactive roadmap, you can toggle in between the different themes. Sometimes you'd like to see the connections and go back and forth. That's all there too. And finally, within the educator resources that you'll see right at the top, and Angie and Sarah are going to give us an example, you can actually filter and sort by theme, by design challenge, and really dive into, I believe we have over 500 resources available right now. So we have a huge collection to just explore. And these are just examples that directly align to our themes and our design challenges. And on that note, I'm going to welcome Sarah and Angie to our conversation today. Ladies, you can give me a thumbs up if you would like me to continue screen sharing for you. And okay, awesome. So I'm so excited that they're here. They can give a more detailed introduction to themselves, but they're going to share some resources and I'm just going to toggle through.
Okay, thanks so much, Natasha. I'll start us off. If you can go to the next slide. Perfect. So this has been a phenomenal evening. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Tina and Katie and all of the educators for being on the call tonight. Angie and I, who you'll hear from in just a moment, are taking notes on the thinking strategy that we just used. And I've already got so many ideas for how we can bring that into our work. So I'm thrilled to be here. I work closely with Natasha, Angie, and Michael and Naisha on this call. I'm at iCivics as a curriculum associate, and I have the great pleasure of thinking about EAD and how that can translate into the classroom. So I started in 5th grade and then spent many years at the secondary level. So I'm excited to show you one resource that you'll find very soon on the Educator Resources site that Natasha just highlighted. So the Long 19th Amendment Project Portal is a dream come true for Theme 5, what Natasha introduced us to earlier this evening. So the idea of institutional and social transformation, one of the go-tos is this notion of suffrage and of expanding the right to vote. And so the particular research collection here includes a lot of teacher-friendly resources. There's a suffrage school site where we have multimedia, including videos for teachers to access and share with students. There's actually something titled a suffrage syllabus, where particular primary sources have been pulled out in ways that teachers can incorporate them into their lessons and in what they're already doing. There's exhibitions, and then over 10,000 primary sources on gender and voting. But again, that suffrage school and suffrage syllabus has kind of distilled that 10,000 plus set of resources into easy to navigate selections for teachers. And what's really interesting about this collection is that it spans kind of colonial era into what we think of as the kind of early 1900s with that 19th Amendment. So it looks at how women gained the vote, lost the vote, gained it back, and what that looks like over those many years. The other resource that I have highlighted is also around the issue of voting. So on the next slide, you will find this one published on the Educator Resources site. Oh, one more for me, Natasha, and then we'll toggle back for Angie. It's GeoCivics, and this is a great resource. It's currently designed for K through 12. So again, it's really adaptable for teachers' needs. This is one of our partners in EAD. And it's bringing those elements of geography into this work, right? We can't have history and civics classrooms without geography. And so this collection calls upon geospatial technology, census data, maybe it doesn't sound that exciting, but the way GeoCivics has engineered it is that it really brings this real-time, up-to-date data into students' hands and classrooms so they can think about the way our districts are drawn, especially at this pivotal moment where many states are redistricting right now. So I think that's a contemporary way that students can think about this theme 5. So those are 2 of my favorite sources. I'm going to turn it over to Angie to share one of hers.
Hi, my name is Angela Clay. I am, again, Sarah already gave me a cool brief introduction, but I work with Sarah, Natasha, and Aisha, who are on this call. I'm a curriculum associate as well in EAD. Before this, I just came out the classroom, like Natasha said, like recently removed, like January. I was the mid-year leaver. Oh my gosh. In the middle of the school year. But my lesson that I had chose, oh, can you go back? Natasha?
Which one would you like, my dear?
So we can start with that one and I'll just,
Or
okay,
you want
we can go with that one first. All right, cool. So, having worked with Natasha, one of the things that she keeps in my head is the elementary age in there. And that is extremely important to me. I have elementary age children here in my household. And so I know what I tell them at home. So one thing that's the biggest thing that I liked about this lesson was that it really was to that elementary piece. And it's showing activism in different ways. Through stamp collections, as far as, maybe, hey, you can draw a stamp that shows activism in there. You can do postcards, all these other different things that necessarily doesn't have to put them in the forefront of what they see or protesting and things are all the way. There are so many different ways to become activists in this. And when we're talking about voting rights and things of that nature, when you look at stamps who, commemorate certain people who help lead voting rights, things of that nature. Well, hey, let's see if we can petition to get this person on this stamp for voting rights. And, that's just a subtle way or something that they can do, or design a stamp that shows why voting is so important. And so that's why I chose this lesson in there, is that it really meets the students exactly where they are in there, and it meets them at a level that they can understand, but it also gives them hope in seeing democracy at hand and understanding that they can participate in this without it being, a negative backlash on them. So that's why I chose this one. And then the second lesson that I chose, because I did come from high school after I went from middle school. So I went back to my roots, clearly with what I know. And it is the Jim Crow citizenship in the Black citizenship in the age of Jim Crow. And the reason I chose this one is to really focus on citizenship when we talk about with voting, right? After the passing of the 13th and then the 14th Amendment, what did the 14th Amendment really do? And it really breaks into not just the Jim Crow, but it lets students understand the importance of the 14th Amendment when it comes to voting and what that means to be a citizen in the United States and the rights that allows you to have based off the 14th Amendment. And so it's one amendment that I feel is like very underrated, very overlooked a lot of the times, but that's why I chose this one when we talk about the institutional and social transformation, how we can draw from past examples and see this still level of activism that is going on. And so with this one, I would definitely split it into 2 a little bit. It's on the website, it's published. But it has some really good primary sources in there, as well as the readings in there. And then you can break it down through the time period that you would need to. But it gives you a chance to really lay that background knowledge on why before you get into voting. That's another reason why I chose this lesson as well, is because sometimes we go right into voting, but we never lay down that background knowledge sometimes enough for students to understand why voting is so important and what it does, and why, it is your right to do this as a citizen here in the US. So those are the 2 lessons that I chose Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you so much, Angie and Sarah. I always love when we're able to have just educators from different experiences come and share some of their favorite resources. Our collection is so vast, but it's nice to give a couple of examples of like, hey, check this out. And on our landing site for today, if something grabbed your attention, like, oh, I want to check this out. Go ahead, jot it down. Sometimes we remember better when we write it down. So go ahead and jot those ideas in the Padlet. And in our last few minutes for today, I'm actually going to close us out. I'm going to spare you from a second small group discussion. It's okay. It's okay. We had a great discussion with Tina, but I want to value your time and make sure you get out of here on time. So here we go. On our landing page for today, if something grabbed your attention, please feel free. And there's also a spot to reflect for the DKP conversation if you haven't done that yet. But if something grabbed your attention, put it in, think about it. And while you're doing that, and as Michael, a wonderful reminder, all of these links are going to be available on the landing page for today. So, and we'll add all of the links that Tina shared earlier. So do not worry about having to rush and write everything down by hand. And we'll also send out a follow-up email so that you get this all in one nice package. So do not worry. And on that note, I do always love to first remind us, don't forget about your exit ticket. It's right at the bottom of the page. Your exit ticket is there for you to do some reflection. It also helps us design better sessions. So even if you do not need professional development documentation, just give us some feedback. We want to make sure that we continue to improve. We're here in this space, not as experts, but as learners with you. So we want to continue to improve our practice too. So take a minute and do that. And I even gave it to you with 5 minutes to spare. So while I close out, you can do the exit ticket. It'll be great. As you're working on your exit ticket, I always think it's important to close out our session to really remember why we want to bring everyone together and why we continue to have this series of conversations. And when we think about the goals for EAD, realizing that 60 million students, 100,000 schools, and 1 million teachers, that's a lot of people. But as we think about that, all of the conversations that you start to have as you join us for the conversation, as you then talk to your colleagues, as you go back, think about our colleagues who are coming back to this series again, and they're saying, hey, I'm using it for my unit planning next year. It has me thinking about, I know someone put in, I'm starting to think about compelling questions more often in my instruction. That's exactly the shift that we want to see. It's going to take time. It's going to take time, but all of us doing our little part is definitely going to improve this across the board and improve history and civic instruction for all students. And if you think about action steps, that what can you do? You're always leaving this session like, thanks, Natasha, but this is what you can do. Thinking about how you can bring someone else with you. Our next 2 sessions are going to be another 2 amazing sessions. So continue the dialogue. I skip ahead, but share the roadmap with your network, share it with your community leaders. I have people who share it with their school leaders and they're like, Natasha, can you come talk to us about this? Of course, this is what I'm here for. This is what I get to do every day, which I love. Explore the resources. So you got just a snippet of some of the fabulous resources on our website. There's so much more to continue exploring. And also know that as you explore that collection, they've been vetted by peers, so by a team of educators from a small team of educators from representing different parts of the country, as well as some academic experts. So this is a great set of vetted resources that you can go in feeling very confident in what you're using. And finally, continue the dialogue. Join us in our next session. Invite a friend to come with you to the next session. We always have a good time. It's hard to believe that our 90 minutes are just about up already. The time flies. And with that in mind, our next 2 sessions, we have Making Connections, Understanding the U.S. and American People in a Global Context, give you a sneak peek. We're going to have our iCivics game designer come and talk to us about the new game, convene the council, and there's going to be a representative from the Council of Foreign Relations. So that's going to be an awesome session. And then session number 8 is going to be thinking about contemporary debates. And we are going to have a guest from the Ken Burns Unum Project. So they're going to come for that session. And we'll have educators as always. It'll be great. So make sure you sign up for those now. And as we close with our 2 minutes, just a huge thank you. Thank you for taking the time, especially this. And I saw teacher appreciation. We didn't forget, especially as we think of this, appreciating all of the hard work that you're doing. Stop sharing my screen so you can see my face. But just letting you know that we really appreciate your time. We appreciate your energy. We appreciate your thoughtfulness and reflections. And thank you for what you do every day. And that's, if I could hug you through the screen, I would. I'd bring you cookies. But I just want you to know how appreciated you are, and all of your hard work and dedication continuing to improve your practice doesn't go unseen. On that note, I hope you have a fabulous evening. Thank you to our wonderful presenters again. We're so excited. Tina, Angie, Sarah, Michael for controlling the chat, Katie, everyone. Naisha, thank you for joining us. Everyone for being here tonight. And I hope we see you again next month, or later this month. Actually, it's later this month. Have a wonderful evening and take care, everybody. I always love when people linger. That means they're doing their exit tickets.
Will you share any feedback would be really helpful?
Yes, I will.
This, we can always get better at these things.
Exactly. I'm going to stop our recording because I'm going to get better at that